There's a process called XENOTRANSFUSION. It involves taking blood from one species and putting it into another, and it can save animals' lives. Case in point, this 3-month-old kitten that recently arrived at a shelter in Nebraska. He was in bad shape with a disease called flea anemia, and volunteers at the Humane Society decided he didn't have long enough to wait for a blood match from another cat. So they called on Brett Michaels. He's a 6-year-old husky mix who'd recently had blood work done at the shelter. They utilized XENOTRANSFUSION to put the dog's blood into the kitten. Well, it seems to have worked. Vets say the kitten started perking up after the procedure, making the dog a hero. Hi, I'm Carl Azus with The World from A to Z. It's great to see you this Tuesday, as always. We've got reports coming up on Americans' trust in media, a butterfly decline in the UK, a Vegetable Orchestra in Austria. But next, we're taking it to the House, the U.S. House of Representatives. It doesn't currently have a leader, and the clock is ticking for lawmakers to decide on one. Earlier this month, 8 Republicans joined all Democrats in voting to remove House Speaker Kevin McCarthy from the job. Republicans control the House, so they'll choose the next speaker, but so far they haven't agreed on whom that should be. The last nominee, Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio, pulled out of the race last week after falling short in the votes needed to win the position. There are several Republicans interested in the job, and the reason it's important for the chamber to determine a speaker is because policy bills and government funding bills are being held up. That includes a big budget bill that'll determine what the government spends money on in the months ahead. The deadline for an agreement on that, if lawmakers and the president can't agree on it, another U.S. government shutdown may be on the horizon.
Oh, word of knowledge. Which of these achievements was made by Lowell Thomas? First TV news anchor, invention of the phonograph, first dean at Harvard, commander of Apollo 13. Known for his sign-off, "So long until tomorrow," Lowell Thomas was the first regular host of a TV newscast.
It's not exactly a new low, but Americans' trust in media has tied its all-time low, and that's according to the Gallup Research Organization. It conducted a survey of more than 1,000 Americans in September. When asked if they had a great deal or a fair amount of trust in mass media, 32% said they did. The only other time the percentage was that low was in 2016. There was a new overall record set in the survey. 39% of Americans said they had no trust at all in the country's media. That percentage had never been that high before. And when you look at Gallup's graph of how this trust has changed over the past 50 years, you see an erratic but overall decline in the percentage who trust the media and an overall increase in the percentage who do not. The reasons why can be inferred from the specific question itself. In general, how much trust and confidence do you have in the mass media, such as newspapers, TV, and radio, when it comes to reporting the news fully, accurately, and fairly? Makes sense when previous surveys have indicated that an unbiased approach, accuracy, and fairness are among the people's priorities when trusting news. And when you break it down by political party, you can see that the trust among Republicans and independents has generally trended downward over the decades. While Democrats historically have had more confidence in media, their trust saw a 12-point drop from last year. These findings could be of great importance to the industry as it and the nation as a whole enter a presidential election cycle that culminates with next November's vote. Teachers, we'd love to hear your class's take on all this. Please leave a comment under today's show at youtube.com/@theworldfromA-to-Z. We've only visited the Pelican State and the Ocean State once so far this season, so let's welcome Louisiana once again. Mrs. DeQuano's class is watching today from the Brighton School in Baton Rouge. And we haven't forgotten about Rhode Island. Mrs. Corbett and her students are here from Samuel Slater Middle School. It's in Pawtucket.
The future is here, but is it a good thing? Several recent crashes involving driverless cars are reigniting safety concerns.
These are big vehicles that can inflict damage if there are crashes or if they hit pedestrians and bicyclists and so on.
Earlier this month, a woman in San Francisco was struck by a hit-and-run driver and then hit a second time by a robo-taxi operated by Cruise, a subsidiary of General Motors. In a statement, a Cruise spokesperson said the AV then braked aggressively to minimize the impact. It's one of two such incidents reported to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which said it also identified two further incidents. Engineering professor Ram Pandiala says it makes sense federal investigators want to know if the company has enough pedestrian safeguards in place. A Cruise spokesperson said it will cooperate with the probe. Pandiala lives in Arizona, where robo-taxis operate.
A lot of folks who take those rides, they are surprised as to how amazing the experience is. I think we'll just have to see how the data really demonstrates the potential benefits from a safety standpoint.
On this date in world history. In 1911, Orville Wright set a world record soaring through the air for 9 minutes and 45 seconds. But Carl, you might be wondering, hadn't the Wright brothers already done that whole flying thing? Well, yeah, the Wright brothers had been flying airplanes for years, but at the time, this was the longest flight in an unpowered glider. Orville was trying out a new stabilizer system and testing wind theories, and that led to the new record in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. And what's known as Black Thursday occurred in the U.S. stock market on October 24, 1929. It marked the beginning of the great crash of that year as share prices dropped, trading broke records, and investors panicked. The worldwide Great Depression followed shortly after the days-long catastrophic market drop.
The Butterfly House of London Zoo is full of beautiful specimens. Here, in this replica of their natural habitat, they can thrive, away from predators and other threats. But in the wild, life is more difficult, and butterflies are becoming harder to find. That's certainly what Amy Wogden and Emma Grice are finding in their rural village of Abbots Kerswell. It's fun to go on a nature walk, but they're also doing it to provide data for the charity Butterfly Conservation.
Having a yearly record of what is around and what isn't around, I think, is really good scientific data.
Monitoring takes place year-round, but the charity is particularly encouraging people to take part in its Big Butterfly Count survey, entering information about how many they spot in its free app. Data from volunteers helped produce Butterfly Conservation's latest report. Lead author Richard Fox says its findings are alarming. 80% of species are in decline, and butterflies are no longer present on average in nearly half the areas they were found 50 years ago.
The major causes of the decline are what we humans have done to the landscape in the UK over the past 50, 60, 70 years. And so that's things like the intensification of agriculture, which is not just chemicals that go into that, pesticides and fertilizers, but also changes to the landscape. So removing hedgerows, maximizing the space for growing crops and pushing nature out of farmland.
The decline in butterflies and other insects isn't limited to Britain, with a 2020 study in the journal Biological Conservation estimating insect numbers worldwide have dropped by 5 to 10% in the past 150 years. The UK government now includes butterfly numbers as an official indicator of biodiversity. The hope is that with proper monitoring and efforts to protect threatened species, the decline in butterfly numbers could begin to reverse.
When I saw the title Vegetable Orchestra, I thought, okay, this will be something cool that probably still sounds good. Well, the Vegetable Orchestra is based in Vienna, Austria, and say they're influenced by experimental music, electronic music, and noise. The group started 25 years ago, playing the tomato before expanding. Now it's leek violins, carrot recorders, cucumber phones, and more. Some of the leftovers from each concert wind up in soup for the audience. Some veggies are probably ready to play right out of the ground. Let us consider fluted pumpkins, fiddleheads, drumsticks, black-eyed peas. Once you're hip to the chive and gingerly tune up your acorn, you're ready to squash any rapscallions that turn up and watercross your path at the Battle of the Bands. Your Aracha-cha is one oak rawsome yard song away from rooting out success, with the audience roota-begging for just one more yam session, y'all. That soups up another edition of The World from A to Z. I'm Carl Azus. It means the world to us to have you watching.